Awesome. And it's recording. Okay, we're live. Somebody's watching.
Oh, another
Cool.
question I didn't ask is, with an event like this, will people be typing questions?
Yeah, and I was going to kind of live up here,
And
and
double
if
check.
something comes up that
Okay.
I'm like, oh, I'll probably pause you and be like,
Okay.
hey, so-and-so asks
That sounds
this. Okay, yeah, I was about to check on my phone to make sure it's working, but we're gaining people.
Okay.
All right, so we got 3 people, and we're still 1 minute
Okay.
from starting. So.
And I hope it's not too weird if I look maybe a little bit at the live stream versus the live audience for
I'm
you.
only here to get on the internet.
Oh, you're only here. Oh, yeah. I
And
mean,
my
you don't
rehired
need
junk
much.
was all shoved into Schlegel there.
Okay,
nice.
well, I'll-
Bill's taken care of, so you
I'll
can just.
talk to the internet.
I looked at a few other jobs though.
Yeah.
I saw that
Good.
concessions
I was
manager
thinking,
thing.
like,
I went,
It would be already pro. So.
did Langdon or somebody move or
It was
who's
Alex Mackey who moved. Yeah.
Alex, man?
Yeah, she's with a different part of the region. So, yeah.
She's in there. Sean and LaBelle, right?
And
Still?
Landon. Yeah. So yeah, that's the information.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, 11 people. All right. They're coming.
Okay. And what do you? I will do that. It'll probably be easier.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and because we've got social distance for ease of hearing me, I'm going to have my mask off. So welcome to everybody who's here at Tri-Valley Library and those who are tuning in via the live stream. This is a training for federal job applications, and a big thank you to Tri-Valley Library for hosting the event to make it possible this winter. So my name is Elizabeth Beavers. I supervise the staff at the Denali Visitor Center in Denali National Park. And by virtue of that job, I do a lot of hiring, and I'm really motivated to talk with people particularly about local hire in this community and the communities along the road system, off the road system, in and around the park. And so today what I hope to do is give you an overview of the types of jobs we have here in the park. Talk to you a little bit about the types of employment options there are out there with a focus on local hire, and also give you some tips on developing a federal resume for those job applications. I'll also try to answer individual questions afterwards, or if you type them in, theoretically we'll be able to see them as you go and I can field your questions. I know the screen for those joining virtually may be a little bit harder to see, so I will try to verbalize anything that's written on the screen in words so that you can get that as well through the recording. But just before we begin, I really think the connection between people and their park is one of my biggest reasons and motivators to want to talk to the community about how to apply to federal jobs, is that having people who work in the park that have that local knowledge, passion, and care for this place is really what helps the work go well, us to serve visitors, and protect the amazing resources in the park. So I'm really pleased that you joined us tonight. So first thing, I'll jump into talking about the types of job in the park. And we have several different work areas, and not everyone may realize all the different areas of work that we're divided to into the park. So I'm going to first open up with our administration group and talk to you a little bit about them. So administration is everyone from those working in budget, human resources, managing property, our IT systems, which in our jobs can take you out to some pretty amazing places, and working with our volunteer program is another example of administration jobs. Right now we don't currently have anything open in administration on local hire, but it is something that often permanent positions could be posted through local hire if you stay tuned for that type of work. We also have our commercial services and planning work teams that are in a work team that currently does have a permanent job open, and that is a concessions specialist. So that's open on USA Jobs right now, and so they support the park's commercial partnerships as well as the work to make sure our projects go through the appropriate planning process before they happen. Our next biggest, I should say the biggest work team in the park is our maintenance division, and so that's a huge range of types of work to make Denali tick. So you might have carpentry jobs, our buildings and utilities folks that keep the lights on and the utilities going for all of our facilities. We have a really big and amazing road crew, which has been put to the test, as I'm sure all of you were, by the recent storms. We also have laborer positions that support all of our maintenance work, whether it's road crew, buildings and utilities, or those that work on trails. So all kinds of ranges of jobs that might be within our maintenance division. And currently, right now on local hire, there are at least 6, if not more, job openings in the maintenance crew, from motor vehicle operators, maintenance workers, trails, and laborers. So if you're interested in this type of work, there are many that are currently open for summer seasonal positions. Another division of labor we have in the park are those in our visitor resource protection crew. That ranges from law enforcement and people working in EMS response when we have an emergency or search and rescue in the park, to those in our mountaineering team down in Talkeetna that support climbers on the mountain. We also have people in visitor resource protection that help care for our Denali sled dog kennels and providing those demonstrations in the summer, as well as backcountry permitting and helping people get out on trips in the park. So right now in those work areas, we do have a kennels position open, mountaineering, and what's known as a general ranger, which could be people hired into that backcountry permitting or into some of that emergency response and resource protection. Another work team in the park that you may or may not be familiar with, because sometimes they're a little bit more behind the scenes, is our resources division. That ranges from cultural resources, so museum collections, archaeology and historians, to those who are doing things like helping remove invasive species from the park, or out there studying our wildlife or managing wildlife-human interactions, and our fire crew. And currently via local hire, we have wildlife technician positions open. And we also have an office clerk position that will support our archaeology and museum crew, and we have an archaeology technician. And often, nationally, fire positions are open for a long period of time, so that could be one that you might be able to find at the moment. Next up for our park positions is one you may be more familiar with if you visit the park, and that is our interpretation team. So those are rangers that I work with that staff the visitor center. They also greet buses out at the Savage River Check Station, and they deliver park programming. And we have a variety of positions at multiple experience levels open currently, including one that is a part-time option. So that might be the type of work, if you like working with the public, that you want to check out our local hire page for today. So that's just a quick overview of some of the types of work that we have in Denali. Next, I want to take you into some of the types of job opportunities we have, and I'm going to quickly start with youth internship programs. The majority of my presentation focuses on job applications that are typically for adults, but we do have several youth internships that help people establish that connection and work experience with the park early on. So the first of these is our Youth Conservation Corps. It's for ages 15 to 18. And these youth, we go into the schools to make sure that youth know about the program and the opportunity to apply. It's about 8 to 10 weeks in the summer with an hourly wage. They wear a YCC uniform, and they work in all sorts of fields, from trails to kennels, interpretation, and sometimes beyond that into maintenance and other experiences. So watch for that in your local schools. Youth do need to live in the area where they can commute. And sometimes we've seen youth do that by making a family arrangement to live with somebody if they are coming from out of state. So that's an opportunity coming up for people within that commuting area, ages 15 to 18. We also have 2 other internship programs, the Student Conservation Association and Scientists in Park. And those are 2 opportunities that people can look online to see what kind of postings we have for internships. Typically in public communication, trails, resources is where you generally see those kind of openings come up, and that's usually for ages 18 and up. So it can be a variety of work experience, but generally for those just past high school or past college who are looking at those kind of internships. So again, that's the SCA.org, and then if you Google Scientists in Parks, you get linked to that internship page. But next up, I want to focus on the main event, which is local hire, of which, as I mentioned, we have a lot of job openings happening right now for summer positions. So local hire is only applicable in Alaska, and you can qualify for local hire by being a U.S. citizen who has special knowledge or expertise regarding the natural and cultural resources of Denali National Park and Preserve, and that you've gathered that knowledge by having either lived or worked in and near the park. And so that could be a pretty broad area of qualifying, and everything that I'm saying is listed on a job announcement. So again, if you cannot read the screen right now during this presentation, you can click on a job announcement and be able to read what I'm sharing with you now. So the areas that are considered near Denali National Park and Preserve for the reasons of having gained this experience are Anderson, Cantwell, Chulitna, Clear, Curry, Denali Park, Ferry, Healy, Kantishna, Lake Minchumina, McKinley Village, Nenana, Nikolai, Petersville, Talkeetna, Tanana, Talida, and Trapper Creek. So any of those communities are near Denali, and having gained that experience in natural cultural resources and that specialized knowledge of the park could make you qualified for local hire. Paper or email applications do have to be turned in by the deadline. So for example, half of our jobs that are currently advertised are expiring this January 14th, so you would need to turn in your application either by email on that date or make sure it's postmarked that date. So those are the two methods to get your application into the park for consideration. The easiest way to find these jobs is to just Google Denali local hire and get the link, but I'll also read the web address. It's nps.gov/DINA/learn/management/jobs-local-hire. So again, you can see easiest to Google Denali local hire jobs, and it will take you right to the website as that top result. And it's something that I usually recommend people check once a week. If you're really interested in watching for Denali jobs, you can just about catch every job opening if you just check that website once a week and are kind of ready to submit your application when you see a job that interests you. So next up, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the elements of an application via local hire. So the most critical element is going to be to turn in a resume. And that resume needs to reflect the periods of time that you lived and worked in this area to be considered for that local hire. So just make sure as you build your resume that whether you've got years of experience 20 years ago living here or currently have lived here long enough to gain that experience, that's clear to our human resources in your resume for that application. You'll also want to read that application carefully, because if there are any skill sets that have a specific requirement, like an example might be an emergency medical technician card that shows you have that certification, or perhaps a school transcript, you just want to read those requirements carefully so when you send in or email in your application that you include those certificates or things that show that you're qualified for the position that you're applying for. Similar to this, you may be applying with veteran status, maybe not to local hire, but through USA Jobs, and you would just want to make sure you have your documentation of veteran status, DD-214, or other required documents as appropriately listed in that job announcement. And I'll certainly say I hire a lot of people, but I am not a human resources specialist, so you are always welcome to contact our human resources department directly or the supervisor listed on the job announcement to clarify details as you read these and are applying to those jobs. So do check out those details. These are just tips to help you along your way. So speaking of tips, I want to talk a little bit more about a resume, because a federal resume can feel different than a private sector resume because of the requirements to successfully apply to a job and make it through those human resources hoops. So one tip is to make sure you include your full name, middle initial, last name to help identify you all the way through your resume, and put that on all of your pages. That helps keep track of your application and make sure that all of the pieces, make it together in your packet so that you can check all those requirements of the job that you met them with your submission. Include a current contact information, including email address and phone number. I know you might say, wow, that's an easy one to say, but you would be surprised. Sometimes there's not a way to get back a hold of the applicant. So make sure that phone number and email address is on there, and it's something that you're monitoring, so when a hiring official reaches out to you, you don't miss that chance, because sometimes the process goes for a really long time and then it moves super fast. So if you put your name in the hat, that's something that I would recommend, including those details and then monitoring that for communication from a hiring official. Again, this next one's not a requirement, just a tip. It always helps to include a couple references. Some hiring officials check references first, do interviews second, or they may ask you for it in the course of an interview anyway. So one tip is go ahead and include that in your application. It makes it much more fluid for you moving through the process. And another thing with that is make sure that reference and contact information is current. Other resume tips that are specific to the federal one is make sure to include that paid and non-paid work experience in chronological order. Helping the hiring official and human resources check your relevant experience and make it easy for them to follow the thread. If that work experience is a federal job, make sure you include the pay schedule, the occupational series, and the grade level that you held. So for an example, in the line of work I do, a park ranger in interpretation would include GS-0025, which is the occupational series, and then 7. That helps the human resources person qualify their time and grade if they're applying to a higher job, to make sure that they are able to be sent on to the hiring official. So if you did have that federal experience, make sure to include it. No matter what type of experience, you want to include the dates and the hours worked for each period of time that you had a job or volunteered or had an internship. You need to kind of imagine that the human resources person may not know anything about your experience or the type of work you did, so you want to really spell it out clearly that you're qualified through the time that you did a job. So a couple examples of this. You could say, so if you're currently employed, I started in June of 2019 to present, and then you have your description of the job. Or you could say I worked from June 2019 to September 2019 to reflect that summer season. For each of those examples, you would want to put 40 hours per week if it was a full-time job, or maybe if it was part-time and you did 18 hours per week, include that detail. That helps them see how much experience you have with that position. Do not say summer 2021 to winter 2021. They can't quantify that experience, and if you're trying to get a higher level job, that may disqualify you from being perceived as having enough time in other jobs that relate to that to be qualified. If at all possible, I always recommend people give the specific dates. So for example, if I started on June 15th of 2019 and worked through October 10th of 2020, that I would include those dates, because it really quantifies that I have more than a year of experience in the type of work that I'm describing. So the more detail you can provide is always better, but just make sure there's dates for every single job, volunteer, or internship experience that you list on your resume. With this resume application, you want to make sure the description of your job is concise and informative, but easy to read and understand. You have to both have human resources look at it and qualify it, as well as the hiring official take a look at your resume. You want to include a level of detail that helps somebody who might not know the type of work that you did really understand your qualifications. And so for an example, if I was a barista and I made coffee, I might articulate the different types of coffee and processes I know how to make in my description, because maybe somebody who's in human resources qualifying me doesn't know what types of skills or machines or processes that I have experience doing. Similarly, somebody trying to qualify me and I said I was a barista might not know that that meant I did money handling and can make change and follow opening and closing procedures to be accountable for that cash. So I'd want to include that in my description. Another parallel example in the maintenance world might be for somebody who's a painter. You might want to list out the types of painting jobs that you've done, the equipment you've used, the processes, rather than just listing, I was a painter from June 2019 to September 2019. That level of detail will help guarantee that you're qualified through human resources for the job if it's relevant to the application that you're doing. One other tip when you're developing this language for your resume is that you could use similar language in your resume that you might see in the qualification description on the job announcement, or in the position duties that are listed. Because if you have that experience and you see that the wording is just slightly different in the announcement, that might help people translate that as they're qualifying your resume for the position. So that's always a good bet, is to just check that. And so if it was listing can make latte coffee drinks, you might say that instead of just I make coffee. That will help match it if you have that experience, so that they can more easily qualify you, like, yes, they have experience for this type of job. More detail is better than just, maybe you're more familiar with that one-page CV that you might use in a private sector application. So when applying federally, err on the side of more clear detail than less, to make sure that qualification is evident. Now, we do have, as I mentioned, a variety of local hire jobs available. I am sure for those joining virtually that this list is not clear, but I just wanted to really show you the volume. We've got about 20-some jobs open right now, some expiring January 14th, some the 21st of January, so get your applications in by that date. And again, you would Google search Denali local hire jobs to most easily get to this page and check out all the different announcements that are available on there. So that's an overview of local hire. I also want to briefly touch on the national platform for hiring, because Denali also recruits on usajobs.gov. And this is a platform that does have some useful tools that even if we don't have current jobs open, you can set it up so that you can be notified if a job opens in the park that relates to your area of interest. So an example is, and I'm just going to pause for a minute, a pop-up screen came up. I'm not sure what happened. We're just going to pause quickly for technology to double check.
Oh, yeah. All right, cool.
Okay,
All
we're good. Thanks for that. All right. So usajobs.gov is the clearinghouse platform for all federal agencies. So you could find jobs for any of the parks in Alaska, Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, etc. by searching on USA Jobs. So usajobs.gov gives you that searchability, and it also lets you create a profile, and you can set it up to have it notify you as jobs open that match your search terms. So my recommendation for USA Jobs is to go in and create a login and profile. You can search by keyword, so you might search again by painter or trail crew or archaeology, whatever it is that you think you're looking for in those jobs. And you can be pretty broad. You can also search National Park Service. You can search Denali. So it depends on how focused your search is or broad. It lets you adapt it to that. Sometimes if you search Denali, you may not get all of our jobs, so I also recommend people double check a McKinley Park search, because that old name is sometimes attached to our job announcements. So searching both ways can be useful. Making a profile in USA Jobs provides you the option to upload a resume or create one through a resume builder. And the advantage of the resume builder is all of the tips that I've provided you about don't forget the dates, don't forget the hours worked per week. It will prompt you to include those. So going through the resume builder could be a way for you to make sure you include everything you need for a federal resume, to make sure you make it through all those checks of human resources. But again, the nicest feature about USA Jobs is that when national jobs are posted, you can receive an email about the jobs opening up, and that can help you check back more frequently for that targeted search that you might have. So looking at a USA Jobs application, when you check it out, it's going to have an overview of the job. It will describe the duties. It will have a section on your qualifications and how you will be evaluated. And it'll tell you about benefits or other info, like if travel is required of the position, etc. And then the last section will be how to apply. And you can click on it and read all of the questions for how to apply in advance of starting the process to submit your application. So part of the application typically is an assessment questionnaire, uploading a resume, any documentations of those special skill sets that might be required. So again, that EMT certification or school transcript, depending on what you need to qualify. Documentation of veteran status, if you have that, and the required forms. So all of those are pieces of the application if you apply through USA Jobs. An example of a job you might find out, again, it was fire might be one that's open, and I think there could be, a variety of Denali jobs posted there right now. I do want to speak briefly to the assessment questionnaire that could happen in USA Jobs. And what it is it would ask a question about your experience, and you would have to respond, I haven't had any education or experience in performing this. I have had education, training, or experience, but haven't yet used it on the job. I have performed this task on the job. I've performed this task as a regular part of the job, or I'm considered an expert. And there's a little bit more detail to each of these. But when you go through, we want people to answer honestly and factually, but it seems like humans, we tend to downplay our experience. So I would say, leave modesty aside, answer it accurately, but don't sell yourself short as you go through an assessment questionnaire. Really try to remember that you're selling your experience and showing what you're capable of, and it should be backed up in your resume. But again, don't downgrade yourself as you go through those questions. So a couple tips for USA Jobs: make sure your experience is supported by your resume. So you can answer all those questions, but then make sure you're showing that you have that experience in your resume so that the two are tied together for that qualification. Another tip for USA Jobs is their deadlines are often Eastern time zone, and that's tough for us in Alaska. So don't save it for that last minute. Get it in for the deadline, but imagine it's East Coast so that you don't miss the boat, because sometimes they're open for a very short period, a couple days, 5 days, a week. So you do want to have that email notification so you can get right in there and apply. Be accurate, as I said, with those answers to the assessment questionnaire, but not too modest. And the nice thing about USA Jobs is they have some great resource and training videos that are on their YouTube page. And so if you search for the USA Jobs Resource Center, or you check out YouTube for USA Jobs How to Apply, there's a series there, and that can be a great way to get to know more detail from hiring official or human resources experts that have that nitty-gritty on qualifying people that I, as a hiring manager, don't have and can't share with you today. So check that out as another resource. So we've taken a fast tour of all of the types of ways that Denali might be recruiting for positions. And just as I sum it up, I know it's shorter via a virtual platform than necessarily in person, but I just offer a couple pieces of advice, which is look frequently for job announcements so you don't miss them on that Denali local hire page or USA Jobs. Have that federal resume prepared in advance and make sure it has all of those details, those dates, hours worked, the type of job or experience you had, and that clear description of the experience that you would bring to the position that would qualify you. And if you have those steps ready, it puts you in a good place that when that let's say dream job with Denali pops up, you're ready to mail or email it in if it's local hire, or if it's USA Jobs, go through the platform and quickly and easily do that assessment questionnaire, upload your documents, and apply. So that federal resume and getting that ready, if it's your first time applying, is probably the biggest step to get you ready to go. Again, on all of those applications, the hiring official and our human resources folks are listed, so if you need more detail or ask a question that we couldn't cover in this training, you can certainly reach out that way and get some assistance. So with that, for today, we're at the end of our training. I know it was a fast one, but if anybody virtually has a question, I think you can type it into comments, and I'll hang out for a few moments to see if any of those come in. If not, thank you so much. Hope to see your name out there on some of our job applications for this summer. We're looking forward to it. Take care. Stop for now.
Yeah, we do still have 10 people hanging out. Okay, so we got one from Jessica Goodell. It says, I saw a job on USA Jobs as well as local hire. Does it matter where to apply?
Yeah, I'm going to take this off again. That's a great question. Does it matter where to apply? I encourage people to put your name in the hat in all avenues open to you, because sometimes we can experience unexpected delays. A job can, on USA Jobs, max out the number of applicants. So for every venue that you're eligible, I would say apply. That just increases your odds of being able to get through those, again, human resources qualifications and have your name land in front of a hiring official for a position. And a good example of this for me, at the Visitor Center, we do advertise both through USA Jobs, and we advertise locally, and that's because we often hire up to 40 seasonals for a summer. And so having all those avenues to get to folks and see their applications is really helpful to me as a hiring official. So great question. I encourage you to do both ways. I'll stick around for a few more minutes, but if any of the viewers, if you don't have a question right now, it was so nice to have you. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and I wish you luck with your application. So we'll hang out if there are comments or questions, but otherwise, thank you so much.
Maybe give it a minute or two, I don't know. Okay, so Krista Johnson asks, just says thank you, Elizabeth, and Tri-Valley Library. Yeah, thank you, Krista. Thanks so much. All right, so I think we are going to call it for tonight, but just for those 6 people still hanging out, if anyone did have a big question mark surrounding whether or not this video will be recorded, we're hoping it will be, and we will be sharing a link via probably multiple sources, email chains, Facebook pages, etc., to try to reach as many people as we can with a link to that recorded video. So thanks again, and I look forward to y'all joining us for the next event.